Greetings, pilgrims, and welcome to another episode of the Polygon Pilgrimage. And today we are going to be creating some ancient Greco-Roman patterns here. As you can see, we've got 3 different patterns to go through. This 4th one is just this guy upside down. But I wanted to take a quick moment to thank you guys so much for all the love and support for the previous video and for the pilgrimage in general. We've shot up over 100 subscribers in a week, and this video from last week is over 2,000 views already. So thank you so much for that. Now, let's jump right into this week's challenge. Was to create some, as I said, Greco-Roman patterns. And I'm going to begin with this one up here, the rectangular pattern. This has sort of a crenulation, a continuous repeating pattern, that kind of up, over, down look to it. And originally when I did this, I planned it all out inside of MS Paint. And what I did was I tried to make sure that my pattern, this guy here, the end result here, or rather here, would end up being a square number from top to bottom across the corner here. And what I chose was 16 by 16 pixels. And what you end up with by doing this is a square, which is great because then here, this second one here, I just rotate it upside down, and now you have it go up, down, over by just rotating upside down. So that square aspect ratio was very important. Now, doing the math for this, I did find that there's either a rounding error in some of the offsets and the scaling, or once you get down into the fine weeds details here, you start to see there's some slight edges. Here you can see right here there's some errors here. You get down to the individual per pixel, there's a bit of a blur or blending that's happening here. So we can't really do too much to do absolute math, but we did our best here. So let's take a look at how we made this first pattern here. So utilizing the shape node here, the square, we're just going to crunch this down. And I found that 0.06 really worked for this kind of individual bar. And then this transform here is multiplied times 2 on the height. So this is a 0.06, so this would be 0.12 as far as the height. And then I'm just positioning this guy, and then doing our offset trick here, and then getting the top and bottom bar. And then here, taking a thicker bar, we start to move it here, and again, this correlated to about 2 pixels on my 16 pixel map, if you will. So you can see here there's 4 here, and then this would be 2 high. So I'm moving these around, and then another one up here, the same thing on the top, blending those together. So now we have our top and bottom kind of bar here, and then we have these 2 bars going here. Okay, moving over, let's rotate this guy on the side, start to get these side bars. So this here, and this, which will go all the way down, and then we'll subtract from it later. So start to put all these things together. There we go, those 2 guys. Oh, and I'm subtracting these edges here, because the important thing is, in order to make this tile horizontally, which is our main goal, you need to make sure that, this is a good example, these squares that we're ending up with here, these square 2 by 2, 2 by 2, notice that this is only a 1, because this 1 and this 1 will connect when it goes daisy chaining from one to the other. So along every edge, these 2 edges and the top and bottom edge, what we're looking for is a 1 wide. So that's why there's a bit of that offset there. So this is to subtract from here to cut those off. And then here, we're going to go ahead and add some more sidebars. So let's go down here and take a look. So we get it in position, we scale it down a bit, and then the other side, combine them, and then add them in. So now we've got over, up, over, down. Okay. Now here we're going to bring another bar in and start to subtract out from this space here using subtract. And you'll note that quite a few times in this process, I'm making heavy use of this cropping area, using the ability to say, I want this effect, but I don't care about, the bottom half of this certain node, or the bottom top part, or the left or right. So this is used quite a bit. So this is one of those secret weapons of doing a lot of these, is this cropping area tool. Very, very good tool here. So make sure you use it when you can. All right, so here we go. We're just adding things and removing things. Here we're cutting this part out. Now this bar gets added in as our horizontal bar here. You'll notice again, using the cropping to cut it off at those points. And then we step our way down, we have another bar here. And this guy, let's see, he is probably not necessary. There we go. This one is to go into there. So I could probably remove that there. I think I put a second one in there, probably trying to get rid of some of that edging that I showed you earlier. So we put our final bar in place, and now he is completely horizontally tileable, and that's what you're seeing up here at the top, this guy here. Let's zoom in, take a look at him. There you go. Looks very nice. Now to get this one all I did was do a rotate and say 180. Boom, he's upside down, and I skewed him over a little bit just to change the offset. So then you have these two things right next to each other. Here the waves help us break it up, but if they're right next to each other, you can change that offset very easily. So that's our first pattern here. I called it rectangular pattern. This is sort of that crenulation again, up, over, down, over. And it's pretty simple. There's no real mystery to it. It's just all about the math and planning it out ahead of time, really breaking down your reference and making sure that you're understanding what's going on, and then that helps us to replicate it. And then all of that gets pushed into our presentation here. This is just combining all of them for the presentation. And we'll talk about the presentation stuff a little bit later on. Now, let's go to the wave pattern. So this wave pattern ended up with a giant letter L here. So the waves are challenged because it's difficult to do things that are curves inside of substance. There's not a whole lot of, curve tools. We have to bend and twist and play with the shapes that we're given. And that's okay. We're up for the challenge. So we start with our shape. We're going to start with a circle. And what I did here, first thing I thought of is, let's offset it by 0.5. And you'll notice, if we look at the negative space here, if I look at the black, I'm getting this curve up, and that's giving me this first part of the shape. So I'm going to isolate that, and this I'm going to invert because I want to work with the white. I don't want the black. And then here we're taking a circle each time, transforming it, moving it around. So this, what we have this curve here, and now we want to continue like this. So again, from the bottom up to here, and then we're going to keep this here. Okay, and here's another circle, so we can start to cut out and start to get this inside shape here. And we do another one here to kind of get a little bit higher. I want it to remain about this thickness completely through. So you see here that we kind of maintain mostly that, and then of course it tapers, which that's fine, that's what we want. But about that shape, and then I want to start to reconnect this here. So take this line and sort of draw it back in. And that's what we start to do here. You'll see here we take another one of these and just move them over slightly, and that helps us to start to draw that line. So you see in there, right there, we connect right up with that line. Very good. And then here I'm using an inverted one of these as a subtraction to get rid of the top part. So you see now we're almost there. And then here another circle to kind of cut off that edge and smooth that out. And then we did need one more to kind of fill in that gap. And now we have our little hook shape. Now what I did was here we move it away from the edge just a little bit. Did a bevel on this to sort of smooth everything out. And then a color to mask to reselect just the white. And here's another secret node that not a lot of people seem to use, is the skew grayscale and the skew color. This is fantastic. I just take this shape and say, you know what, let's make it more interesting. Let's give it a little bit of a transform here. This is a way to sort of do that parallelogram transform that you can't do with a transform node very easily. So this skew grayscale is fantastic. So we just move that just 0.35, not a whole lot. I did use the center and of course horizontal, and now we have our wave, and you can see here it worked out quite nicely. All right, on to our third pattern. So our third and final pattern is this interlocking pattern, and that's this guy at the bottom here. So let's take a moment to analyze this. So this is two different tracks that cross over one another, and they cross over at two different points. This lower track, as I call it, overlaps the upper track here, and then it goes underneath the upper track as it goes over top of the lower track here. So to create that interlocking continuous pattern, here's what we did. Again, using a shape node, which we could borrow from the same one. This is a 0.12, if you see. And from our earlier pattern over here, this was a 0.06. So if we took this node, in theory, it should be identical. However, looking at them under a microscope kind of thing, I do think there's a bit of a rounding error or maybe a blurring that occurs down at the pixel level. So this is not exact, but that's okay. So we take this guy, and we're going to start just generating the full pattern. And then we go back and we subtract from it. So you notice here, just briefly here, we're putting every single path that we can. It's just a bunch of rotate, put it in the right spot, and then again I'm using the offsets, and then for the blend, sometimes I do use some of the cropping. And what I'm blending here together is just all the different paths that make up the complete path. So let's work our way through it here. You'll see what I'm talking about. We start to add, and then right around one of these, I think we end up with every single path. Oh, now we start to do some subtracts to get to our final path. So here we're removing bits, like removing from there, and this is removing from there, and here we're removing that part, and finally removing from here. And now this is both paths complete. See, up, down, over, down, over, up, over, and then over, up, over, down. So we do need to subtract this little piece here still too. So now Once we have a complete mask of everything, we can break it down into both of the individual masks that we need. So taking our full pattern here, you'll notice making use of the cropping again. I'm going to crop it down a bit. I'm going to remove that center part. I'm going to remove from the edge there and then remove from the middle. And now I have the one pattern unaffected by the other. Now I do bring it up here and you'll notice that this uses a square, and this square is made up of this node here. It's a shape brought down to 0.12 and 0.12. And this is to subtract the area that the other path crosses over. Now, same thing down here. We're going to take this and start to remove the other pattern so we get the secondary pattern. Now this pattern goes up, over, down, and then across. So we're going off the page here. So that's something important to keep in mind, because we do need to make these channels in the middle, and we'll do that over here in just a short bit. So now with both of our patterns, and with the little square here as our utility to cut out where they overlap one another, this one in particular also needed a bit of a cut off as well. So we're going to use that there, and you'll see here so that we remove that bottom piece in order to make our channels. So now the channels are, these have an outer edge, and then this inner part here, that's where you can have any color you want, or anything you want. You put any other pattern in there. So we make use of the slope, and you can see here, this is the shape stroke grayscale. This is another node that not a lot of people know about, and this is a fantastic node because it allows you to create this inside channel, or almost like a road. It almost looks like this would be great for streets or roads. And you have these almost like a stroke edge, very similar to a stroke overlay in Photoshop. And we can use that, and then if I do a color to mask, you'll see it more clearly here. Now I've selected all of this. Now, however, I did need to get rid of this little part here where it connects the two together, because it's using a total shape from here, which I get, perfectly makes sense. But we want to get rid of that, so let's cut that out, because now this will stop here and continue across here. There we go. And then the same thing for this guy here. There we go. And I think we removed that guy there. There you go. We removed that there so that he continues as well. And you'll notice this did our little turn the corner for us, which was awesome. So he turns the corner right there, and that's where it starts to tile. Okay, which you can't even tell. That's how seamless it is. Very good. Now, finally at the end here, we're going to throw it into a couple of bevels. And these bevels are to give us some of this soft edging around the corners. Now this did give me an unintended but pretty awesome side effect when I blend them together. So I blended these together just using a straight copy, putting the two together using the top one as our opacity here. And you'll notice that from this, it gave us this sort of interlocked channel look to it. And I actually really like this. I think this was a total accident, but happy accident. It looks great. I think it's really cool. It's a neat little sculptural detail. If you don't like that, you could mess with this mask a little bit more to really sell more of this kind of an effect where it just abruptly ends. But it was a happy accident, and I'm happy to keep it, so I like it. All right, so now down here, what I'm creating is the mask for the actual color in the middle here. And this is, you could use this for a color, or you could use this for any other pattern, anything you like in the background. So what I'm doing here is taking, again, our total pattern. I'm going to do an invert grayscale so I get the actual background. And then by blending and using this top part, blending them together, you see we do have a little bit of an edge to deal with. So this levels here is to crunch the whites all the way up, so then we're left with just the inner channel. And then there we go, let's invert that grayscale, and now we have that mask as well. And that gets pumped way over here into the colors. So that is for our interlocking pattern here in the middle. So there's your mask, play with it as you will. Okay, so we have our three patterns complete. The presentation here is nothing special, just some transforms, scaling them, moving them around, adding them together, putting them all together so that we have something to show you here. But I will talk a little bit about what I did here for the height build and the base color, and I did a little bit of some research into chipping. I haven't done a lot of work with this, but there's a couple things I learned which I think would be appropriate, especially for this theme of patterns here. So to begin with, let's take from here. This is just all of them put together, and then I bring this over into an ambient occlusion, specifically an HVAO, and with a little bit of adjustment, I was happy with this result here. Now, pumping it through levels to try and just kind of bring things down a little bit. I didn't want things popping off of here. I wanted them to be relief. So then a little bit of a blur, high quality grayscale to get the background smoother. I was getting some stepping in here, especially when I put it into a normal map. Speaking of normal map, let's blend these together, and I'm going to remove the background because I only want the actual relief parts here. So then throwing this into a temporary normal just so that I can put it into a curvature, and the curvature goes into the edge damages here. And we're going to use this to sort of get this chipped away look. You see, weathered in time has really broken up the surface, but I just wanted the outermost pieces are the ones that are most exposed to the environment, so those are the ones that we wanted to really affect the most. Okay, so we'll hold on to that for a second. Let's come back down here for a moment. So this is working on our general height here, blending things together, doing some blurs, a little bit of level adjustment, and then blending these two together at the end. So what we got here is the background we got to be a bit darker, and the foreground we got to be a bit lighter, and we did it in these steps. And a lot of this was blurring the background to get rid of that stepping effect. I think it might have been some artifacting from this HBAO, so just kind of work that out. We get that down, there we go. So this is looking a lot better. Okay, so over here we do have our edge damages, and I'm going to do a little bit of a blur, and then I'm going to slope blur grayscale this to kind of break it up and give it this more pitted look. The way rock and stone gets damaged over time, it's these tiny little chunks come off, so we're going to do that there. And then down here, this is a little bit of experimentation with some grunging. So doing some blending, putting different grunges together. I wanted things that looked rocky, that looked like it was a microsurface that would be from a stone. And then sort of lowering it a bit. I want to make sure I only get certain areas. I don't want to hit it all so uniformly. And then transform, moving around, scaling it up, that kind of thing, just to kind of get some randomness to it. And then here we ended up with a fairly nice mask. It's a little hard to see on the video, but you can see we hit some areas pretty hard and other areas not as much. So we throw this into a levels, doing some levels adjustment. And then here, this is pretty neat. I threw it into an edge detect, and you get sort of a too much. It's almost too much at first, but what you get is there's a couple areas that are really nice to look at. This, I think, was one in particular. Then I blur it a little bit, and by blending the two on top of each other, you get this nice mixture of really bright and then some darker pitted spots, and it just came out pretty nice. I like the end result quite a bit. So then let's blend that together with our overlay from the top, and you see what I'm talking about here. We get a nice sort of every possible stage from the furthest back to the closest all at once here. So here I added a a fractal sum base, blending this together to get a bit more of an overall stony kind of that, compacted material look to it. And then bringing this guy in on top of that, you can see here as the damage starts to occur on top of that. And then we're going to gradient map this guy to push him up into the colors. But while we're here, let's take a look. So this guy here, this nice little grayscale number, he becomes, straight up becomes our height here. And I think it's working quite nice. It could do a little bit more with the absolute edges. I wanted a tighter control on the edges, but I think that looks really nice. Then here, this is my chip mask, is what I'm calling it. This is actually the inverse of my chip mask. This is these painted surfaces, as you can see here, with the chipping, all the chipping removed. So you can see how it's not painted here, and it's painted here because obviously it's chipped away. And this was created just from a levels here, from way over here, this guy, affecting the levels, and then blending it using this with a levels and an invert grayscale. And this levels, if I believe, is, this guy has everything pumped really way up so that you get some thicker areas. And then I invert that as a mask here to cut out the chipped parts. So this becomes my paint mask up here. Okay, so looking at the paint, nothing too crazy here. Putting in some color, some base color here. And then this is a little bit of a dirt, and just making some general color, color varieties. We don't have the same thing all over. And then here we're starting to get a little bit more, and this is some of the damage, I believe, starting to work its way in. Yeah, the color change going on there. And then this is our paint layer, and so this would be your paint color here, your main paint color, which is this color. And you can see here using the chip mask, we make sure to not put it in the areas that have been damaged. And then here's some general grunge in the background. It's very subtle between these two. It might not even show up on the video between those two. Yeah, it's very light. But this is our grunge here, just kind of, again, another layer. Everything is built in layers, so you just build it up one piece at a time, just like real painting. That's what we're doing here. Build that up, and it just adds some variety to the surface, so you're not looking at the exact same thing all over. And then these two colors here, these are both set to an add sub a little bit below half for our color overlay. And that's partially just so that you guys can see it easier here in the video for demonstration purposes, and also to show you that if you wanted to paint these surfaces, you could do the same thing. Now for these two, I did not also include the chip mask, so you can see this is painted, so this is incorrect. So just to give a good happenstance example of the difference between the two. You see it looks very good here with the pieces chipped out, but then down here, you know, the pieces that should be chipped out, they're colored. So that's incorrect. So that shows you the difference and why that chip mask is so important. And that's really all there is to it. So we put that on there, put that in there. You can see how that channeling works there. So before and then after, putting the channeling in there. There you go. And then all these just get pushed to our final output. So there it is, guys. Some Greco-Roman patterns here. I had a couple more that I was working on, and I think these are the best. The others are really just a variant of these, and I think they'd be quite easy to generate from this. You could take something like this and move it over a bit so that this is more on the edge, and then do a mirror down the center and then a mirror upside down. And, you know, the fact that we have it as a square means that it's very easy to do those things. So keep that in mind when you're generating your patterns. And I think that's all we have for you guys. I hope you have enjoyed it very much. Again, thank you so much for all the attention to the videos. I'm really glad that you guys have been enjoying them. That's both encouraging to me, and it also lets me know that you're interested and you want to see more, so I'll keep doing it. So if you send in anything you guys want, if you have a challenge, something you're working on, you can't quite get it, or if you have, you know, a crazy idea, I want to hear all of it so that we can just jump right in and make it. Really appreciate all the support, guys. As always, keep practicing, get better, and I will see you next time as the pilgrimage continues.